September 1877. The woman Cole dragged from the inferno stood over 7 feet tall, her frame powerful enough to break a man in half, yet when she looked at him, her eyes held only the quiet acceptance of someone who'd been waiting to die. When her father appeared at his ranch the next morning with an impossible demand, Cole realized saving her life was nothing compared to what came next. Would he sacrifice everything he'd built for a stranger the world had already condemned to death? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Cole Mercer had learned to read smoke the way other men read newspapers. 23 years working cattle across the Arizona territories taught a man which clouds meant rain and which meant trouble. The column rising from Dead Horse Canyon wasn't either. It was deliberate, controlled, the kind of smoke that came from someone burning something they wanted gone. He reined his horse to a stop on the ridge overlooking his northern pasture, squinting against the late afternoon sun. The canyon lay just beyond Apache land, a boundary he'd respected since buying this spread 8 years ago. Smart ranchers didn't cross invisible lines, especially when those lines kept the peace between two worlds that had been at war longer than Cole had been alive. But that smoke bothered him. It rose straight and black, fed by something more than brush or deadwood. Cole had seen enough structure fires to recognize the signature: timber, thatch, the things people built shelter from. His cattle grazed peacefully below, oblivious to anything beyond grass and water. 40 head of prime stock, the result of years spent rebuilding what drought and bad luck had nearly destroyed. This ranch was modest, no sprawling empire, just 600 acres of decent grazing land, a sturdy cabin, and a barn that didn't leak when it rained. It was enough. More than enough for a man who'd spent his youth drifting between outfits. Never planting roots, never seeing the point, Cole touched the scar along his jaw absently, a habit he'd developed without noticing. The raised line ran from his ear to his chin, a souvenir from a spooked horse and a low-hanging branch 10 years back. It had healed crooked, pulling his mouth into what looked like a permanent half-frown. Made him look unfriendly, which suited him fine. Unfriendly means people left you alone. The smoke thickened, spreading wider. Cole's horse shifted beneath him, sensing his tension. He should ride back to the cabin. Check the southern fence line like he'd planned. Ignore whatever was happening across the boundary because it wasn't his concern, and getting involved in Apache affairs was a quick way to end up dead or worse. His hand tightened on the reins. The problem was, Cole had never been good at minding his own business when something felt wrong. It was a character flaw his father had pointed out repeatedly before dying and leaving Cole to figure out life without guidance. "Your conscience is gonna get you killed, boy," the old man had said after Cole brought home a half-starved drifter one winter. Not everyone's worth saving, maybe, but Cole had never figured out how to tell the difference until it was too late. He urged his horse forward, heading toward the canyon. The animal obeyed reluctantly, ears flicking back in doubt. Smart horse? Smarter than its rider, probably. The land sloped downward into scrub brush and scattered juniper. Cole had been this far north only twice before, once when he'd first surveyed the property, and once 3 years ago, when a mountain lion had taken one of his calves. Both times he'd felt the weight of being watched, though he'd never seen anyone. Apache scouts were legendary for that. You didn't see them unless they wanted you to. As he descended into the canyon, the smoke grew denser, stinging his eyes. The structure came into view through the haze. A small dwelling, more hut than cabin, built into the canyon wall for shelter. Flames consumed the eastern side, crawling up the walls with the hungry determination of fire given good fuel. Cole's breath caught. Through the collapsed doorway, he saw movement. Not the frantic thrashing of someone fighting to escape, but something stranger, stillness, as if whoever was inside had simply accepted their fate. He dismounted fast, grabbing his canteen, stupid, useless against a fire this size. But his body moved before his brain caught up, pulling his bandana over his nose and mouth, squinting against the heat radiating from the structure. "Anyone in there?" he shouted, knowing it was pointless. If they could answer, they'd already be out. The flames roared louder, answering for them. Cole stepped closer, peering through the smoke. The figure inside wasn't moving toward the door, wasn't even trying. They lay pinned beneath what looked like a support beam, watching the flames approach with eerie calm. What stopped Cole wasn't the danger or the heat or the certainty that entering meant serious burns at minimum. What stopped him was the size of the person trapped inside. They were massive, not heavy, but tall, impossibly tall, with shoulders that seemed too broad for the narrow space. Even lying down, pinned and helpless, they looked like they could tear the walls apart if they chose to. For a heartbeat, Cole wondered if he'd stumbled into something beyond his understanding. Apache legends spoke of giants, of spirits who walked the earth in forms that defied nature. His rational mind dismissed it immediately, but his instincts screamed caution. Then the person's head turned. Eyes found his through the smoke. Dark eyes, deep as wells, holding something Cole recognized instantly, because he'd seen it in his own mirror for years after his father died. Resignation, the bone-deep certainty that fighting was pointless because the outcome was already decided. Cole had worn that look for 3 years. Moving through life without purpose, waiting for something he couldn't name. He'd hated it then, hated seeing it now. He pushed through the doorway. The heat slammed into him like a physical blow, stealing the air from his lungs. Smoke filled his throat, thick and poisonous. He dropped low, crawling toward the pinned figure, every breath agony. Up close, the person's size became even more apparent. A woman, he could see that now, built on a scale he'd never witnessed. Her arms, though trapped, showed muscle definition that belonged on working men, not women. Her face was striking despite the ash and sweat, with features that would have been beautiful if they weren't twisted in pain. She stared at him without speaking, without hope, as if help was just another cruelty the world had decided to inflict before finishing her off. Cole grabbed the beam. It didn't budge. The wood was thick, rough-hewn, probably weighing 300 pounds. He repositioned, planting his boots, pulling with everything he had. Nothing. The woman's eyes widened slightly, surprise maybe that he'd even tried. But she didn't speak, didn't beg, just watched him struggle with something that logic said couldn't be moved by one man alone. The roof groaned above them. Cole had seconds, maybe less. He thought about his father, about dying alone and angry, about 8 years spent building a life that meant nothing because he'd built it for no one. He thought about the look in this woman's eyes and how familiar it felt. Then he stopped thinking and just pulled. His shoulders screamed. His back threatened to give. Then something inside him, some reserve he didn't know existed, ignited. The beam shifted an inch, then another. The woman rolled free, just as burning thatch began raining down around them. Cole didn't remember getting outside. One moment they were inside the inferno, the next they were 20 feet away, collapsed in the dirt, gasping for air that didn't burn. The structure folded in on itself with a sound like thunder, sending sparks spiraling into the darkening sky. Cole lay on his back, chest heaving, wondering what he'd just done and why he'd done it. Beside him, the woman sat up slowly, deliberately, and for the first time he got a full sense of her proportions. She towered. Even sitting, she matched his height standing. Her presence filled the space around her, commanding attention not through aggression, but through sheer physical reality. She looked at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, without a word, she stood and walked into the gathering darkness between the canyon walls. Disappearing like smoke, Cole remained on the ground, watching the structure burn to ash, wondering what he'd saved and from what. The smoke rose into the purple sky, carrying questions he didn't have answers for. Tomorrow, he'd learn that saving her life was the simplest part. Tomorrow, everything would change in ways he couldn't imagine. But tonight, he just lay in the dirt, breathing clean air, and wondering why she'd looked at him like rescue was worse than death. Cole didn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, He saw her face, that terrible acceptance, the way she'd looked at him like he was just postponing the inevitable. He'd pulled plenty of animals from bad situations over the years, seen that look in dying cattle's eyes. But never in a person, never in someone who'd clearly chosen to stop fighting. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Dawn broke cold and clear over the Arizona territory. Cole stood on his porch, coffee steaming in his tin cup, watching the eastern horizon bleed from purple to gold. His shoulders ached from yesterday's effort, and his lungs still felt raw from the smoke. Small prices for a life saved, except he wasn't sure he'd actually saved anything. The woman had walked away without a word. No thanks, no explanation, nothing. Just disappeared into the canyon like a ghost, leaving him with more questions than a man should carry into sleep. His cattle were already moving toward the water tank, their routine undisturbed by his crisis. Life continued, whether you understood it or not. That was the thing about ranching. The work didn't care about your confusion. Cole was halfway through his second cup when he heard them. Horses, multiple riders, coming from the north at a measured pace. Not rushing, but not leisurely either. The kind of approach that said official business. He set his cup down carefully, his hand instinctively checking for the rifle propped beside the door. He didn't grab it. That would signal fear or guilt. But knowing it was there steadied him. 4 riders emerged from the morning haze. Apache, judging by their dress and the way they sat their horses like they'd been born in the saddle. The lead rider was old, maybe 70. But he carried himself with the rigid authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. His hair was white, pulled back and bound with leather, and his face was a roadmap of lines earned through hard decades. The 3 younger men flanking him were warriors. Cole recognized the type even across cultures, serious, watchful, hands never far from weapons. They weren't here for friendly conversation. Cole stepped off his porch slowly, keeping his movements deliberate and non-threatening. He'd dealt with Apache traders before, knew enough to show respect without showing weakness. The balance was delicate. The old man dismounted with surprising grace, his dark eyes fixing on Cole with an intensity that felt like being measured for a coffin. He studied Cole for a long moment before speaking in clear, barely accented English. "You are Cole Mercer." Not a question. A statement that suggested the old man knew exactly who he'd come to see. "I am," Cole replied, keeping his voice level. "And you are?" "Kuruk." The old man took 3 steps closer, closing the distance, but stopping just outside what politeness would call personal space. "Chief of the Red Canyon Band." He paused, letting that sink in. "Last night you entered our territory. You went to the dwelling of my daughter." Cole's mind raced. The woman from the fire was this man's daughter, a chief's daughter. That complicated things in ways he didn't fully understand yet. "I saw smoke," Cole said simply. "Someone was trapped. I helped." "Yes." Kuruk's expression remained unreadable. "You saved Aita's life. For this, I am in your debt." The words should have brought relief. Instead, they landed with the weight of something far more complicated. In Cole's experience, debt between strangers rarely ended well, especially when cultures and expectations collided. "No debt," Cole said quickly. "Any decent person would have done the same, but they did not." Kuruk's voice hardened slightly. "My own people set that fire. They watched to ensure she could not escape. You were the only one who tried to save her." The casual admission hit Cole like a fist to the gut. Her own people had tried to burn her alive. Deliberately, methodically, not an accident or a tragedy, but an execution. Why? The question came out before Cole could stop it. Kuruk's jaw tightened. Because they fear what they do not understand. Because she was born different, and difference becomes dangerous in the minds of frightened people. He took another step forward. "But that is not why I am here." Cole waited, dread building in his chest like a coming storm. "Among my people, when someone saves a life, they become responsible for that life. It is not tradition, it is law, spiritual law." Kuruk's eyes bored into Cole's. "You saved my daughter. Therefore you must take her as your wife." The words hung in the morning air like smoke. Cole's brain stuttered, trying to process what he'd just heard. Marriage? To a woman he'd spoken no words to? To someone he'd met for exactly 5 minutes while pulling her from a burning building? That's... Cole started, then stopped, unsure how to finish the sentence without causing offense. That's not how things work in my world. It is how they work in mine, Kuruk replied flatly. And Ayita cannot return to our village. She will be killed if she does. Perhaps today, perhaps tomorrow, but certainly within the week. The young warriors who set the fire are gathering support. They believe her death will protect the tribe from her curse. She's not cursed, Cole said, the words coming out harder than intended. She's just tall. I know this. Kuruk's voice carried a weight of frustration and pain. I've always known this. But I am one voice against many, and even a chief cannot stand against the entire tribe when fear takes root. One of the younger warriors behind Kuruk shifted uncomfortably, his eyes scanning the horizon as if expecting trouble. Kuruk noticed the movement and his urgency increased. I am asking you to give my daughter what I cannot provide, safety, a place where she can exist without persecution, a life. He reached into a leather pouch at his belt and pulled out a small doeskin bag, setting it on the porch railing. This is all I can offer in trade. But know this, if you refuse, I will understand. And Ayita will be dead before the next moon. Cole stared at the bag, his mind reeling. Yesterday, he was a simple rancher worrying about fence lines and water rights. Today, he was being asked to marry a stranger to save her from murder. The leap between those two realities was too vast to cross in one conversation. This is insane, Cole said, not harshly, just stating fact. You're asking me to upend my entire life for someone I don't know, based on 5 minutes of crisis. I am asking you to honor the life debt, Kuruk corrected. In my culture, pulling someone from death creates an unbreakable bond. You cannot save a life and then abandon it. The spirits do not allow such things. I don't believe in spirits, Cole shot back. That does not matter. Kuruk's voice remained steady. The debt exists whether you acknowledge it or not. And the warriors who want my daughter dead believe in spirits very much. They will come for her regardless of your beliefs. Cole ran a hand over his face, feeling the scar tissue along his jaw. This was madness. Pure, complete madness. Why me? Why not find someone from your own people who'd protect her? Because my own people are the danger, Kuruk said bluntly. Because in 2 days I will no longer be chief. The council is removing me for refusing to sanction her execution. Without my protection, she has nothing. The admission landed like a physical blow. This man was sacrificing his position, his authority, everything he'd built to keep his daughter alive. And it still wasn't enough. What did she do? Cole asked quietly. What crime justifies all this? Kuruk's face hardened into something between rage and grief. She was born. That is her only crime. She grew too tall, too strong, too different. When she was young, the medicine men tried to stop her growth, binding her bones, starving her, performing ceremonies that left scars you cannot see. His voice cracked slightly. When nothing worked, they declared her touched by dark spirits. And when she defended herself from a man who tried to kill her 3 winters ago, they decided she was too dangerous to live. Cole thought about the woman from yesterday. Her size, her strength, the way she'd looked at him with those resigned eyes. This wasn't a monster or a curse. This was someone who'd been tortured for being born wrong in the eyes of her community. I need time to think, Cole said. You have until sunset. Kuruk turned to remount his horse. After that, we must move her regardless of your answer. The warriors are gathering. They will come for her soon. He paused, 1 foot in the stirrup, and looked back at Cole. She is at Copper Creek, 2 miles west of here. She refused to come closer to your home, said she did not want to trap you with her presence. Something in his voice softened. You should speak with her before deciding. She deserves that much. The 4 men rode off, leaving Cole alone with an impossible choice and a leather bag he hadn't opened. The sun climbed higher, warming the morning, but Cole felt cold all the way through. He picked up the bag, feeling its weight. Inside were coins, Spanish silver and American gold, probably everything Kuruk owned. A chief's fortune offered for his daughter's life. Cole set it back down without counting it. No amount of money could balance this equation. This wasn't about payment or trade. This was about whether he could live with himself if he said no, and that woman died because of his refusal. He'd told Kuruk he needed time to think, but he was already moving toward the barn, already saddling his horse, because he knew himself well enough to understand that he couldn't walk away without at least talking to her, without understanding what he'd actually be agreeing to. The ride to Copper Creek took 30 minutes through scrubland and scattered pine. Cole had been there before. It was a reliable water source he sometimes used when moving cattle. The creek ran clear and cold, fed by mountain springs that never dried even in the worst droughts. He found her sitting on a flat boulder near the water's edge, her back to him. But he knew she'd heard him approach. Her posture had changed, shoulders tensing, head tilting slightly to track his movement through sound alone. In full daylight, away from fire and smoke, Aita looked even more imposing. She wore a traditional Apache dress, but the buckskin had been modified to fit her extraordinary frame. Her arms, bare to the shoulder, showed not just muscle, but a pattern of scars, straight lines, geometric patterns, deliberately placed marks that spoke of years of painful ceremonies. Cole dismounted, ground-tying his horse. He stopped 15 feet away, giving her space. "Your father came to my ranch this morning," he said, breaking the silence. She didn't turn around. Her voice, when it came, was deeper than most women's, but clear and steady. "I told him not to. Told him to let me handle this myself." "Handle it how?" "By leaving. Going north, maybe, or west. Somewhere far enough that my people's fear can't follow." She paused. "Or by not leaving at all." The implications of that last statement made Cole's chest tighten. "You're talking about dying." "I'm talking about ending this," she corrected. 27 years of being treated like a disease, like something that contaminates everything it touches. At some point, you have to wonder if everyone else is right and you're the problem. Cole moved closer, his boots crunching on the creek stones. "You're not the problem. People's fear is the problem." She turned then, those dark eyes finding his with unsettling intensity. "You don't know me. You don't know what I've done. I know you didn't start that fire yourself. I know someone tried to murder you and you didn't fight back. That tells me plenty. It tells you I'm tired," Aita said. "It doesn't tell you I'm worth saving." The resignation in her voice was worse than anger would have been. This wasn't self-pity. This was someone who'd been beaten down so thoroughly that they'd accepted the world's judgment as truth. "Your father asked me to marry you," Cole said. Deciding directness was better than dancing around the subject. "Has said it's the only way to keep you safe." Aita laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Of course he did." The great Kuruk, solving his embarrassment by giving his cursed daughter to the first white man who showed basic decency. "That's not fair," Cole started. "Isn't it?" She stood abruptly, rising to her full height, and Cole had to tilt his head back to maintain eye contact. "Do you know what I am to my people? A punishment, a sign that my mother must have committed some terrible sin before I was born. They tried to fix me, binding my limbs, breaking my bones and resetting them, starving me to stunt my growth." She held up her hands, and Cole saw the scars more clearly now. Deliberate marks, ritual cuts, signs of ceremonies performed in desperate attempts to make her normal. When nothing worked, they decided I was possessed, dangerous, something that needed to be isolated. She took a step toward him, and despite himself, Cole's instincts screamed to retreat. "So they built me a dwelling far from the village, brought food once a week, and pretended I didn't exist. And I accepted it, because at least isolation was better than their ceremonies. Until someone decided isolation wasn't enough," Cole said quietly. She nodded. 3 nights ago I heard them outside my dwelling. Young warriors, arguing about whether killing me would bring honor or shame. They compromised, set the fire, and left. If I died, it was the spirit's will. If I survived, perhaps the flames would purify me. The casual cruelty of it made Cole's jaw clench. Your father is trying to protect you. My father is trying to save face, Aita corrected. He's a chief who can't protect his own daughter without losing his authority. So he found you, a white rancher with no ties to our world, someone who could take me off his hands and ease his conscience. Before Cole could respond, the sound of approaching horses cut through the morning. Not from the east, where Cole had come from, but from the north. Multiple riders moving fast. Aita's entire body went rigid. They found me faster than I expected. Who? Cole asked, though dread was already pooling in his stomach. The ones who want to finish what the fire started. 6 riders emerged from the tree line, moving with the confidence of hunters who'd cornered their prey. They weren't dressed for ceremony or negotiation. These were men who'd come to do violence and leave. Cole stepped between Aita and the approaching horses without thinking, his body moving on instinct. His hand went to his hip, though he'd left his rifle with his horse, and his sidearm was still at the ranch. It was a stupid, reflexive gesture that wouldn't stop anything, but he couldn't just stand aside. The lead rider was young, maybe 25, with a face carved from stone and eyes that held the kind of righteous certainty that made men dangerous. He pulled his horse to a stop 30 feet away, the others fanning out behind him in a practiced formation that spoke of coordination and intent. He spoke in Apache, his words sharp and clipped. Cole didn't understand the language, but he understood the tone. This wasn't negotiation. This was pronunciation. Behind him, Aita translated quietly, her voice flat. He says to step aside. Says this doesn't concern white men who don't understand the ways of his people. Tell him he's on disputed territory, Cole replied, his eyes never leaving the young warrior. And that you're under my protection. Aita hesitated. That will only make things worse. They came here to kill you. How much worse can it get? She spoke in Apache, her words carrying across the creek bed. The young warrior's face darkened, his hand moving to the knife at his belt. He responded with a string of words that dripped venom. He says I poisoned his sister, Aita translated. Made her barren with my presence. Says the medicine men confirmed it. Wherever I go, crops fail, children sicken, animals die. Did you? Cole asked, though he already knew the answer. I've never spoken to his sister. Never been near her. Her voice carried the exhaustion of someone who defended themselves from baseless accusations too many times. But his sister lost 3 babies before birth. Someone had to be blamed. The warrior spoke again, this time directly addressing Aita. His words came faster, building in intensity. 2 of the other riders dismounted, their intentions clear. What's he saying? Cole demanded. Aita's jaw tightened. He's listing my crimes. Says I brought drought to the northern valleys. Says 3 hunters died last winter because I cursed their weapons. Says a child went blind after looking at me, she paused. Says the spirits have spoken through the medicine men. I must die before the next full moon, or the entire tribe will suffer. Cole's mind raced through options. 6 armed warriors against 1 unarmed rancher, and a woman they'd already tried to kill once. The math was brutal. His horse was 20 feet away, his rifle still in its scabbard. Even if he could reach it, he'd get off maybe 2 shots before they overwhelmed him. Can you run? Cole asked quietly. Not fast enough. Not from men on horses who know this land? Aita took a breath. You should step aside. You've done more than anyone had a right to expect. Not happening! The young warrior dismounted, drawing a long hunting knife. Sunlight glinted off the blade as he spoke again, his words measured and formal. He's making it official, Aita translated. Challenging me directly. Says if I won't face my judgment, he'll deliver it here and now. Cole stepped forward, putting himself between the warrior and Aita. He wants a fight? He fights me first, the warrior laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. He responded in broken English this time, wanting Cole to understand. You die for a demon? For thing that should not be. I die for a woman who's done nothing wrong except be born different, Cole shot back. What's your excuse for being a coward who burns people alive rather than facing them? The insult landed exactly as Cole intended. The warrior's face flushed with rage, his grip tightening on the knife. He took 3 steps forward, closing the distance, clearly intending to make Cole regret his words. Then Aita moved. She didn't attack or threaten. She simply stepped around Cole and stood at her full height, letting the warriors see every inch of her. 7 feet of muscle and bone that nature had built on a scale most people never witnessed. She spoke in Apache, her voice carrying across the creek with absolute authority. The effect was immediate. The warrior stopped advancing. One of the mounted men actually backed his horse up several steps. "What did you say?" Cole asked. "I told them if they want to kill me, they should try," Aita replied, her eyes locked on the young warrior. "But I won't burn quietly this time. I won't run. Whoever comes for me should make peace with their families first, because they won't see another sunrise." It was a bluff. It had to be. But watching the warriors' faces, Cole wasn't entirely sure. There was something in Aita's stance, in the way she carried herself, that suggested she meant every word. The young warrior's bravado cracked. His eyes darted to his companions, looking for support or reinforcement. But they were all watching Aita with barely concealed fear. Cole saw his opportunity. "You're afraid of her," he said, his voice cutting through the tension. "All of you? That's why you set the fire instead of facing her. That's why you brought 6 men to kill 1 woman. We fear the curse, not her," one of the other warriors protested, but his voice wavered. "You fear what she represents," Cole corrected. "Someone stronger than you. Someone you can't control or understand, so you call it cursed, and convince yourselves murder is justified." The young warrior spat on the ground, trying to reclaim his authority. "You know nothing, white man. You were not there when she..." Hoofbeats cut him off. Heavy, fast, coming from multiple directions. Cole's heart sank, thinking reinforcements had arrived. But the riders who emerged weren't more warriors coming to join the fight. Kuruk appeared from the west, with a dozen armed men behind him. His weathered face was set in fury, his presence commanding immediate attention. He positioned his horse between his daughter and the young warriors, speaking in rapid Apache that needed no translation. This was a leader exercising authority, and the young warriors were being forced to back down. But the confrontation was far from over. The young warrior who led the group shouted back at Kuruk, gesturing at Aita with clear contempt. An argument erupted, heated, intense, with multiple voices overlapping. Cole watched the exchange, trying to read body language and tone. Kuruk was fighting for his daughter's life with words, but the young warriors weren't backing down completely. They were cornered, forced to retreat but not defeated. Finally, Kuruk's voice rose above the others, silencing them with a single sharp command. The young warriors mounted their horses reluctantly, their faces promising this wasn't finished. The lead warrior locked eyes with Aita one last time before wheeling his horse around and riding off, his companions following. But the looks they shot back over their shoulders carried a clear message. This was a temporary retreat, not a surrender. Kuruk turned to Cole, his face grim. "You see now what we face. Those men will return, and next time they will bring more. Many more. How long?" Cole asked. 2 days. "Maybe 3, if I can delay the tribal council." Kuruk's voice carried the weight of defeat. "But I cannot stop them. Even as chief, I cannot stand against the entire tribe when they believe their survival depends on her death." Cole looked at Aita, who stood rigid and silent, watching her father with an expression that mixed anger and resignation. Then he looked at Kuruk, this old man who was sacrificing everything to save his daughter and still failing. "The answer is yes," Cole heard himself say. Kuruk's eyes widened slightly. "You will take her as your wife?" "I will." Cole's mouth felt dry, but his voice stayed steady. "Under one condition. Name it." "This isn't about life debt or spirits or tribal law," Cole said firmly. "This is about 2 people agreeing to help each other survive. Nothing more, nothing less. I'm not buying her or taking ownership. We're partners, equals. That's the only way this works." Kuruk studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Agreed, but the ceremony must happen now, before those warriors return with others. Now." Cole's voice cracked slightly. "Here?" "Here," Kuruk confirmed. He dismounted, pulling a small bundle from his saddlebag. "We do not have time for traditional ceremonies. The binding must be quick, but it must be legitimate." Aita finally spoke, her voice strained. Father, you don't have to. Yes, I do. Kuruk cut her off, his voice softening for the first time since arriving. You are my daughter, my only child. I failed to protect you from our people's fear, but I will not fail to give you a chance at life. He turned to his warriors. Bear witness. What happens here is sacred and binding, under tribal law and territorial law. Any who dispute it will answer me. The warriors dismounted, forming a loose circle around them. Cole felt surreal standing there. Less than 2 days ago, he'd been worrying about fence posts and water rights. Now he was about to marry a woman he'd barely spoken to, in a ceremony he didn't understand, to save her from people who wanted her dead. Kuruk unwrapped the bundle, revealing ceremonial items. A woven cord, a small clay bowl, dried herbs that Cole didn't recognize. He worked quickly, speaking in Apache as he arranged them on a flat stone near the creek. In my culture, Kuruk said, switching to English, marriage is a contract of protection and partnership. Love may come later or it may not. What matters is the commitment to stand together when the world stands against you. He looked at Cole. Do you understand what you're agreeing to? This isn't temporary. Among my people, marriage bonds cannot be broken except by death. There is no changing your mind when times get difficult. I understand, Cole said, though his heart was hammering. Kuruk turned to his daughter. Ayita, this man offers you his name, his home, his protection. He offers you a life beyond persecution. Do you accept? Ayita's eyes found Cole's, searching his face for something. The lie, the trap, the inevitable betrayal that experience had taught her to expect. She'd been hurt too many times to trust easily. The silence stretched. One of Kuruk's warriors shifted uncomfortably, glancing toward the tree line, as if expecting the young warriors to return. We're running out of time, Kuruk said quietly. Ayita took a shaky breath. I accept. Kuruk looked at Cole. And you, Cole Mercer. This woman offers you her loyalty, her labor, her presence in your life until death. She offers you honesty and partnership. Do you accept? Cole thought about his 8 years of solitude, his careful life built on avoiding complications and connections. He thought about how empty that life had become, how he'd been just going through motions without purpose. I accept. Kuruk picked up the woven cord. Traditionally, we would bind your hands together, speak prayers over you, perform rituals that take hours. We don't have hours. He took Cole's right hand and placed it against Ayita's left palm. Her hand was massive compared to his, scarred from years of attempted cures and ceremonies. But when she closed her fingers around his, her grip was surprisingly gentle. In the eyes of the spirits, in the eyes of the earth, in the eyes of those who witness, Kuruk said, his voice carrying ritual weight despite the rushed circumstances. You are now bound. What was 2 is now 1. This cannot be undone by law or custom. Only death breaks this bond. He wrapped the cord around their joined hands once, symbolic rather than functional, then removed it. It is done. She is now your wife, your family, your responsibility. Cole looked at Ayita, at this woman he'd just married, and saw his own uncertainty reflected in her eyes. They were strangers, bound together by desperation and circumstance, with no idea if they could actually make this work. But they were alive. For now, that had to be enough. One of Kuruk's warriors called out a warning in Apache. Kuruk's head snapped around, his hand going to his weapon. They're coming back, he said. With more. Many more. Cole saw the dust rising in the distance, too many riders to count, heading their direction with clear purpose. Get on your horse, Kuruk commanded. Both of you. Head south, then west. There's an old Spanish mission 3 days' ride, abandoned but sheltered. Stay there until I send word it's safe. What about you? Ayita asked. I will delay them as long as possible. Give you time to disappear. Kuruk's face was grim. This is my last command as chief. They will not ignore it easily. Cole moved to his horse, mounting quickly. Ayita hesitated, looking at her father with an expression that held decades of complicated emotion. Go, Kuruk said, his voice breaking slightly. Live, that is all I ask. Just live. Ayita nodded once, then grabbed the reins of one of the spare horses and mounted with practiced ease. Even on horseback, her size was striking. She looked too large for the animal, though it bore her weight without complaint. "Ride hard," Kuruk said. "Don't stop until you reach the mission. Don't trust anyone. And remember, you are married now, under both tribal and territorial law. Anyone who harms either of you harms a legally recognized union." Cole spurred his horse forward. Ajita followed, and together they rode south as the dust cloud in the distance grew larger, and the sound of many angry voices began to carry across the creek bed. Behind them, Kuruk and his warriors formed a line, buying them precious minutes with their presence. Cole didn't look back. He focused on the path ahead, on the woman riding beside him, who was now legally his wife, on the impossible situation they were fleeing from. They'd been married for less than 5 minutes, and they were already running for their lives. Somehow, that felt appropriate for how this entire mess had started. They rode hard for 2 hours before Cole finally allowed them to slow. His horse was lathered with sweat, breathing heavily, and Aita's mount looked no better. Pushing them further without rest would leave them stranded on foot, which was worse than any risk of being caught. Cole guided them into a narrow canyon, where red rock walls provided cover and a thin trickle of water ran between scattered boulders. Not ideal for defense, but good enough for a brief stop. He dismounted, his legs unsteady after the hard ride. Ayita slid off her horse with surprising grace despite her size, immediately moving to check the animal's legs and hooves with practiced efficiency. "You know horses," Cole observed, loosening his cinch to let his mount breathe easier. "I had to learn something useful," Ayita replied without looking up. "My father insisted. Said even if the tribe rejected me, I could always find work with traders or ranchers who needed someone strong." The casual mention of her father planning for her exile hit Cole harder than it should. This woman had grown up knowing she'd eventually be cast out, that her own people were just counting days until they could be rid of her. Cole pulled his canteen from his saddle, taking a long drink before offering it to Ayita. She hesitated, then accepted it, careful not to let her lips touch where his had been. The gesture was small, but it spoke volumes about how she saw herself, contaminating, unclean, something to be kept separate. "We're married now," Cole said flatly. "You can drink from the same canteen." She looked at him, surprise flickering across her face. "That's not—" "I didn't want to presume—" "Stop that," Cole said, more sharply than intended. He softened his tone. "Stop acting like you're a burden I'm tolerating. We made an agreement. Partners, remember?" Ayita took a drink, then handed the canteen back. "Partners don't usually get forced into arrangements at knife point with a mob coming." "Fair point," Cole admitted. He settled against a boulder, feeling the exhaustion in his bones. "But here we are anyway. Might as well figure out how to make it work." Ayita remained standing, her eyes scanning the canyon rim, with the wariness of someone who'd learned never to feel completely safe. "You should know what you've actually agreed to. What I really am. You're a woman who's been treated like hell for circumstances beyond her control," Cole said. "That's what I know." "That's what you want to believe," Ayita corrected. "But there's more to it than just being tall." She turned to face him fully, and in the shadowed canyon light, her size seemed even more pronounced. "I'm not just different, Cole. I'm stronger than any man I've ever met. When I was 12, I accidentally broke a warrior's arm during a game. When I was 15, I moved a boulder that 3 grown men couldn't shift. And 3 years ago, when that man came to my dwelling with a knife," she trailed off, her jaw tightening. "Your father told me about that," Cole said quietly. "He said you defended yourself." "I killed him," Ayita said bluntly. "Not in a fair fight. Not with a weapon. I grabbed his wrist when he tried to stab me, and I squeezed until his bones broke. Then he came at me again, and I pushed him. Just pushed him. He hit the wall so hard his skull cracked." She held up her hands, staring at them like they belonged to someone else. "These hands have ended a life. Not because I wanted to, but because I don't know my own strength. And that terrifies people. It should terrify you." Cole studied her in the filtered sunlight. She wasn't boasting or threatening. She was confessing, offering him an out, expecting him to recoil with the same fear everyone else showed. "Does it terrify you?" he asked instead. The question seemed to catch her off guard. "What? Your own strength? Does it terrify you?" Ayita opened her mouth, then closed it, considering. "Yes," she finally admitted. "Every day. I have to think about every movement, every gesture, how hard I grip things, how much force I use. One mistake, one moment of forgetting, and I could hurt someone badly. So you've spent your whole life holding back," Cole said. "Making yourself smaller, weaker, less than you are, just so other people feel safe. What choice did I have?" Her voice carried an edge of frustration. The alternative was proving them right, that I was dangerous, uncontrollable, exactly the monster they feared. Cole stood, brushing dust from his pants. "That man who came to kill you. Did you invite him? Did you threaten him first?" "No, but did you hunt him down, seek revenge? Kill anyone else after that?" "No," Ayita said firmly. "I've never hurt anyone who didn't come for me first." "Then you're not a monster," Cole said simply. "You're someone who survived an attack. The fact that your survival was easier than most people's doesn't change what it was. Self-defense." Ayita looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "You say that now? But wait until you see me actually use this strength. Wait until you see what I'm capable of when pushed. Then we'll see if you still think I'm just a victim of circumstances." Before Cole could respond, the sound of something moving through the brush above them froze them both. Not horses, footsteps light and careful, trying to be quiet. Cole's hand went to his rifle, easing it from the scabbard silently. Ayita moved without sound despite her size, positioning herself behind a boulder where she could see the canyon rim. A figure appeared at the edge, small, hesitant, definitely not one of the warriors who'd been chasing them. Cole kept his rifle ready but didn't aim. The figure scrambled down the canyon wall with the recklessness of youth. As it got closer, Cole realized it was a boy, maybe 13 or 14, Apache by his dress, carrying a small leather pack. The boy reached the canyon floor and stopped abruptly when he saw them. His eyes went wide at the sight of Ayita, but instead of fear, his face showed something closer to awe. "Ayita," he said in accented English, then continued in rapid Apache. Ayita responded, her tone sharp with questions. The conversation went back and forth several times, the boy gesturing urgently, Ayita's expression growing darker. Finally, she turned to Cole. "This is Nahuel. He's Kuruk's messenger, one of the few young ones who doesn't fear me. What does he want?" Cole asked, still wary. "He says the warriors caught up with my father an hour after we left. There was a confrontation." Her voice went tight. "Kuruk's been stripped of his position as chief. The council declared him corrupted by his daughter's curse. They gave him a choice: denounce me publicly and declare the marriage invalid, or be exiled." Cole felt his stomach drop. "What did he choose?" "Exile," Ayita said, her eyes glistening. "He chose exile. Nahuel says he's being escorted to the territorial boundary now. He'll never be allowed to return." The boy spoke again, urgent and insistent. Ayita listened, then shook her head firmly, responding in Apache. The boy argued back, his voice rising slightly. "What's he saying?" Cole demanded. "He wants us to go back. Says some of the younger warriors are having second thoughts, that seeing Kuruk exiled has made them question the medicine men's words." Ayita's jaw set. "He thinks if we return and I face the council directly, we might be able to change minds." "That's suicide," Cole said flatly. "That's what I told him," Ayita agreed. "But Nahuel believes—" "He thinks there's a chance." The boy pulled something from his pack, a rolled piece of leather with markings on it. He handed it to Ayita, speaking softly. She unrolled it, her breath catching. "What is it?" Cole moved closer. "A petition," Ayita said quietly. "Signed by 37 people, tribe members who don't believe I'm cursed, who want the exile reversed." Her hands trembled slightly. "I didn't know there were this many." Cole looked at the names marked on the leather, unable to read the Apache writing, but understanding the significance. 37 out of how many?" "Our band has maybe 200 people total," Ayita said. 37 isn't a majority, but it's enough to cause division. Enough that the council can't claim unanimous support. Nahuel spoke again, his young face earnest and hopeful. Aita translated. He says more will sign if I come back. If they can see I'm not the monster the medicine men describe. If they can witness that I haven't brought destruction to you. We've been married for 3 hours, Cole pointed out. That proves nothing except we're both still breathing. It proves I can exist near someone without corrupting them, Aita countered. That's more than most of them believe possible. She looked at the petition again, her expression conflicted. Cole could see the war happening behind her eyes, the desperate hope that maybe, possibly she could have her life back, warring against the certainty that returning meant death. No, Cole said firmly. Both Aita and Nahuel looked at him sharply. This isn't about whether some people believe you're cursed or not, Cole continued. Those warriors who came after you, they weren't interested in debate or petitions. They wanted you dead. And they're not going to change their minds because a few dozen people signed their names on leather. But if there's a chance, Aita started. There isn't, Cole cut her off. You go back, and even if half the tribe supports you, the other half will still try to kill you. And then what? You fight them. Prove you're dangerous by defending yourself again? Or you let them kill you to prove you're not? The harsh truth of his words hung in the canyon air. Aita's face crumbled slightly, the hope draining away as reality reasserted itself. Nahuel spoke again, more desperate now. Aita shook her head slowly, responding in Apache. The boy's face fell. He argued more, but Aita remained firm, her voice gentle but final. The boy finally nodded, disappointment clear in every line of his young body. He said something else, then turned and began climbing back up the canyon wall. What did he say at the end? Cole asked. He said Kuruk told him to tell me something. Aita's voice was thick. That he's proud of me. That I should live no matter what. That my life is worth more than their fear. She stood there holding the petition, tears finally spilling over. Not loud, dramatic crying, but silent tears that spoke of decades of pain, finally finding release. Cole didn't move to comfort her. Some grief was too big for comfort, too personal for a stranger to intrude on, even a stranger who was now legally her husband. After several minutes, Aita wiped her face roughly, rolling the petition back up. We should keep moving. Nahuel said the main hunting party is still looking for us. They're checking every canyon and water source between here and the territorial line. How far to this Spanish mission your father mentioned? Cole asked. 2 more days if we pace the horses right. 3 if we have to go slow to avoid trackers. She glanced at the sky, judging the sun's position. We've got maybe 4 hours of daylight left. Cole moved to his horse, checking the cinch. Then we use it. Put as much distance as we can before dark. As he mounted, Aita spoke quietly. Thank you. For not making me go back, for understanding that hope isn't always the answer. Hope without realistic chance is just another way to die, Cole said. And I didn't marry you just to watch you throw your life away, proving a point to people who've already made up their minds. They rode out of the canyon as the afternoon sun began its descent. 2 people bound together by circumstance, fleeing toward an uncertain future. Behind them, Nahuel disappeared back into Apache territory with his petition of names. 37 people who'd tried to change fate and failed, but ahead maybe there was something else. Not redemption or acceptance from those who'd rejected Aita, but the possibility of building something new where the past couldn't reach. Cole glanced at his wife riding beside him. She sat her horse with the posture of someone who'd spent a lifetime making themselves smaller. Less threatening, less visible, maybe somewhere safe. She could learn to take up the space she actually needed. Maybe they both could. They made camp as darkness fell, choosing a cluster of rocks that offered shelter and concealment. No fire, too risky with hunters potentially tracking them. They ate cold jerky and hardtack from Cole's saddlebags, washing it down with creek water that tasted of minerals and stone. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable, but it was heavy with unspoken questions. Cole kept catching himself stealing glances at Aita, trying to reconcile the woman sitting across from him with the concept of wife. She did the same, her eyes darting away whenever their gazes met. "You should sleep," Cole finally said. "I'll take my first watch." "I don't need much sleep," Ayita replied. "Another thing about me that's different. 4 hours and I'm fine. Must be useful." "It was lonely," she corrected. "Lying awake in that dwelling for hours every night with nothing but darkness and my own thoughts." She paused. "Although I suppose it's lonely either way." Cole settled against a boulder, his rifle across his lap. "Have you ever thought about leaving before? Just walking away from all of it?" "Every day for the last 10 years, Ayita admitted. "But where would I go? I don't know the white man's world. I don't know how to live in cities or towns. And any Apache band I approached would either recognize me or hear the stories eventually. So you just stayed, let them torture you with ceremonies and isolation." "I stayed because my father asked me to," Ayita said, her voice hardening. "Because he kept promising things would get better, that people would eventually see reason." She laughed bitterly. "I think I stopped believing him around the time they tried to break my legs to stop me from growing taller. I was 14. Cole's hands tightened on his rifle. "They broke your legs?" "They tried," Ayita corrected. "Turned out my bones are as stubborn as the rest of me. They'd break, but they'd heal wrong, stronger than before. After the 3rd attempt, even the medicine men admitted defeat." She touched her shin absently. "Still ache when it rains, though." The casual way she discussed having her bones deliberately broken made Cole's stomach turn. This wasn't just persecution or fear. This was systematic torture of a child, sanctioned by adults who should have protected her. "Your mother?" Cole asked carefully. "Where was she during all this?" "Dead," Ayita said flatly. "Died giving birth to me. The medicine men said it proved I was cursed, that I'd killed my own mother coming into the world. My father tried to argue that many women die in childbirth, that it wasn't my fault. But people believe what they want to believe." She drew her knees up, wrapping her arms around them. Despite her size, the gesture made her look smaller, younger, vulnerable in a way that contradicted her imposing frame. "He tried, you know," Ayita continued. "My father, he really did try to protect me. But being chief meant balancing the needs of many against the needs of one. And I was always just one." Before Cole could respond, his horse nickered softly, a warning sound. Both he and Ayita went still, listening, voices, distant but getting closer. Multiple people speaking Apache, their tone suggesting urgency rather than casual travel. Cole and Ayita moved simultaneously, gathering their supplies with practiced silence. They led the horses deeper into the rocks, finding a narrow crevice where they could hide and wait. The voices grew clearer. Cole counted at least 4 distinct speakers, maybe more. Through a gap in the rocks, he caught glimpses of torchlight, dangerous for the carriers but effective for searching in darkness. The searchers passed within 30 feet of their hiding spot. Cole held his breath, his hand on his rifle, knowing that if they were discovered, he'd have maybe one shot before being overwhelmed. Ayita stood perfectly still beside him, barely breathing, her size making their hiding spot feel impossibly cramped. In the torchlight filtering through the rocks, Cole could see the tension in her jaw, the way her hands clenched and unclenched. The voices faded, the torchlight moving on. But neither Cole nor Ayita relaxed. They waited in the darkness for another hour before Cole finally whispered, "We need to move, now." "In the dark?" Ayita questioned. "The horses could break a leg. If we stay here until morning, they'll find us," Cole replied. "They're working a grid pattern, checking every possible hiding spot. They'll circle back." They led the horses carefully through the darkness, moving by feel and memory of the terrain they'd covered earlier. It was slow, dangerous work. Every loose rock, every unseen dip in the ground threatened disaster. They traveled for 3 hours in near-total darkness before the moon finally rose, providing enough light to see more than a few feet ahead. Cole's nerves were frayed, his muscles tense from the constant vigilance required to keep from stumbling. "There," Ayita said quietly, pointing. "That outcropping. We can rest there until dawn." They made it to the shelter, just as exhaustion truly set in. Cole's legs felt like lead, and even Ayita moved with the heavy slowness of someone pushed past their limits. This time, they both slept, taking turns in short shifts. When Cole woke for his second watch, he found Ayita sitting at the edge of their shelter, staring out at the landscape painted silver by moonlight. "Can't sleep?" he asked, keeping his voice low. "Thinking," she replied, "about what happens when we reach this mission. What comes after that?" "We figure it out," Cole said. "Find land somewhere remote, build something new, and if they keep coming, if the warriors don't stop at the territorial boundary..." Cole had been wondering the same thing. "Then we keep moving until we find somewhere they can't follow." Ayita turned to look at him. "That's not a life, Cole. That's just running. Eventually you run out of places to run to. You have a better idea." She was quiet for a long moment. "No," she finally admitted. "That's what scares me. I don't know how to live any other way than as a problem someone needs to solve or eliminate." Cole moved to sit beside her, leaving a respectful distance between them. "You're not a problem, and I'm not trying to solve you. Then what are you doing?" Ayita asked, genuine confusion in her voice. "Why did you really agree to this? And don't tell me it was just about saving my life. You could have pulled me from that fire and walked away. You didn't have to bind yourself to me forever." Cole considered the question, searching for truth in his own motivations. "You remember how you looked in that burning dwelling? That acceptance in your eyes, like you'd already made peace with dying." Ayita nodded slowly. "I spent 3 years wearing that same expression," Cole said. "After my wife and daughter died from fever, I just stopped, kept ranching because it was habit, but I wasn't really living. Just existing, waiting for something to give me a reason to feel again." He looked at her directly. "Pulling you from that fire was the first time in 3 years I felt like my life mattered, like my choices could make a difference. And when your father showed up asking me to protect you, it wasn't about debt or spirits or tribal law. It was about having a purpose again." Ayita stared at him, her expression unreadable. "So I'm your purpose now? That's a lot of weight to put on someone you barely know." "Maybe," Cole admitted. "But you're not just dead weight I'm dragging along out of obligation. You've got skills, strength, knowledge I don't have. This partnership goes both ways, or it doesn't work at all." Before Ayita could respond, the sound of horses, many horses, shattered the quiet night. But these weren't coming from behind them. These were ahead, blocking their route west. Cole grabbed his rifle, his heart sinking. They'd been flanked. While they'd focused on evading the trackers behind them, another group had circled around, cutting off their escape route. Torches appeared on the ridge ahead. Cole counted 12, maybe 15 riders. Were too many to fight or outrun, especially with exhausted horses. "They boxed us in," Ayita said, her voice tight. "Pushed us into a trap," a voice called out in English, accented but clear. "Cole Mercer, we know you are there. Come out and we will let you leave alive. We want only the cursed one." Cole recognized the voice. It was the young warrior from the creek, the one who'd challenged Ayita. He'd brought reinforcements and learned patience, letting his prey think they were escaping while actually herding them exactly where he wanted. "What do we do?" Ayita whispered. Cole's mind raced through impossible options. They were trapped between 2 groups with nowhere to run. Fighting would be suicide. Surrendering Ayita was unthinkable. "We need leverage," Cole muttered. "Something they want more than they want you dead." "There's nothing they want more than that," Ayita said flatly. "Then we make something they fear more than they hate you." Before Ayita could ask what he meant, Cole stepped out from their shelter, rifle raised. "You want her? You go through me first, and I promise you, I'll take at least 3 of you with me before I go down," the young warrior laughed. 3 bullets, white man. We are 15. "The math does not favor you." "Maybe not," Cole called back. "But I'm betting you don't want to be one of those 3. So here's my counteroffer. You let us pass, and nobody has to die tonight. You're in no position to negotiate. Neither are you," Cole shot back. "Because if you attack us, I don't aim for warriors. I aim for horses. And in this terrain, in the dark, you'd have wounded animals screaming and panicking. Half your men would be thrown or trampled before they even reached us. It was a bluff, but delivered with enough conviction that he saw some of the warriors shifting nervously. Horses were valuable, far more valuable than pride to most men who depended on them for survival. The young warrior's voice hardened. "You would threaten innocent animals." "I'd do whatever it takes to protect my wife," Cole replied. "Just like you're doing whatever it takes to prove some twisted point about curses and corruption." The standoff stretched. Cole could feel Aita behind him, coiled and ready to fight if it came to that. He knew that if violence started, she'd defend them both with that terrible strength she'd described, and that would only prove the warriors right about her being dangerous. Then a new voice cut through the tension, older, authoritative, speaking in Apache. The warriors ahead of them shifted, making way for another rider. A man emerged from their ranks, elderly but sitting his horse with military precision. He wore a mix of Apache and military dress, and even in the torchlight, Cole could see the scars of a career warrior. He spoke in clear English. "I am Nitus, war chief of the Red Canyon Band. You are Cole Mercer." "I am. And the woman behind you is Aita, daughter of Kuruk." "She's my wife," Cole corrected. "Legally married under territorial law and your own tribal customs. Any harm to her is harm to a legal union." Nitis studied them for a long moment. "I know of Kuruk's ceremony. It was witnessed and binding." He paused. "But binding does not mean accepted. The council has declared the marriage void, performed under duress and corruption." "The council doesn't have that authority," Cole argued. "Territorial law supersedes tribal decisions on legal contracts." "Perhaps," Nitis acknowledged. "But we are not on territorial land. We are on Apache land, where Apache law governs." Cole's stomach dropped. He'd been so focused on reaching the territorial boundary that he hadn't realized they were still technically within tribal jurisdiction. Nitis continued, "However, I am not here to debate law. I'm here because you have caused a problem. I saved a woman from burning alive," Cole said. How is that a problem?" "You have divided our people," Nitis replied. "Some believe you are a brave man defending an innocent woman. Others believe you are a fool corrupted by dark spirits. This division weakens us at a time when we cannot afford weakness." He dismounted, walking forward until he stood just outside comfortable range. In the torchlight, Cole could see his face clearly, weathered, wise, carrying the weight of difficult decisions. "I do not believe in curses," Nitis said quietly. "I believe in survival, and Aita's presence in our tribe has become a threat to that survival, not because of what she is, but because of what people believe she is." "So you'll kill her to keep the peace," Cole said bitterly. "No," Nitis replied. "I will give you a choice. A fair one, witnessed by all here." Cole felt Aita tense behind him. "What choice?" "Trial by endurance," Nitis said. "An old tradition, rarely used. If Aita can complete 3 trials that prove she is not cursed, the council must accept the evidence and allow her to live in peace. If she fails or if she refuses, the marriage is voided and she faces judgment." "What kind of trials?" Aita asked, speaking for the first time. Nitis looked past Cole at her. "Trials that test strength, wisdom, and spirit. Trials that will either prove you are blessed by the spirits rather than cursed, or prove the medicine men correct." "And if she succeeds?" Cole demanded. "You guarantee she'll be safe?" "I guarantee the council will have no grounds to call for her death," Nitis replied. "But I cannot guarantee acceptance or welcome. That is something only time can provide." Cole turned to look at Aita. In the moonlight he could see the conflict on her face. This was what she'd wanted, a chance to prove herself, to earn her place. But it was also a trap, rigged by people who wanted her dead. "Don't do it," Cole said quietly. "It's not worth the risk." Aita met his eyes. "What if it is? What if this is the only way to stop running?" "They'll rig the trials," Cole argued. "Make them impossible to pass. Then I fail, and we're no worse off than we are now," Aita replied. "But if there's even a chance," she turned to face Nitis directly. "I accept your trial, but on one condition: Cole stays with me through all of it. As my husband, he has that right." Nitis considered this, then nodded. Agreed. You both come to the council grounds at dawn tomorrow. The trials will be witnessed by the entire tribe. No deception, no trickery. Just truth, whatever form it takes. He remounted his horse, preparing to leave. Know this, I'm giving you a chance I do not have to give. Do not make me regret showing mercy. The warriors withdrew, their torches fading back into the night. Within minutes, Cole and Ayita were alone again. We should run, Cole said immediately. Right now, while we still can. I'm tired of running, Ayita replied. Tired of being afraid. If there's any chance of living without constantly looking over my shoulder, I have to take it. Cole wanted to argue more, but he could see the determination in her face. She'd made her decision. And as her husband, strange as that word still felt, he would stand beside her through whatever came next, even if it meant walking into a trap that could kill them both. Dawn broke over the council grounds, with the kind of clarity that made everything seem too sharp, too real. Cole and Ayita rode in together, surrounded by Nitis's warriors, who served more as escorts than guards. The message was clear. They were guests now, not prisoners. At least, not yet. The council grounds occupied a natural amphitheater carved into red rock, with steep walls on 3 sides and a wide opening facing east. Nearly the entire Red Canyon band had gathered, men, women, children, elders. 200 pairs of eyes watching as Ayita dismounted and stood at her full height. Cole heard the whispers, saw the way some people made protective gestures, how mothers pulled children closer. But he also saw others, younger people mostly, watching with curiosity rather than fear. Their expressions suggesting they'd never actually seen Ayita before, only heard the stories. Nitis stood at the center of the grounds, beside a fire pit that hadn't yet been lit. Flanking him were 3 elderly men in ceremonial dress. The medicine men, Cole realized, the ones who'd declared Ayita cursed. Their faces were carefully neutral, but their eyes held the cold certainty of men whose authority had been challenged. Ayita, daughter of Kuruk, Nitis called out, his voice carrying across the amphitheater. You have accepted trial by endurance to prove you are not cursed by dark spirits. These trials are ancient, created by our ancestors to separate truth from deception. Do you still accept? Ayita stepped forward. I accept. And you, Cole Mercer, white rancher who claims this woman as wife. You stand witness? I stand with her, Cole corrected, moving to Ayita's side. As husband, as partner, as whatever this requires. One of the medicine men spoke, his Apache translated by Nitis. The white man cannot interfere with the trials. He may watch, but he cannot help. Understood, Cole replied, though his hand instinctively moved toward his rifle. Nitis noticed the gesture and shook his head slightly, a warning. The first trial, Nitis announced, tests strength of body and purity of spirit. If Ayita is truly cursed, her strength comes from dark spirits and will fail when called upon to serve rather than destroy. He gestured to the eastern opening. Warriors brought forward a massive boulder, rolling it with obvious effort until it sat in the center of the grounds. The stone was roughly spherical, easily 4 feet in diameter, scarred with ancient tool marks. This stone has been used for trials for 7 generations, Nitis explained. It must be carried to the top of the eastern ridge and placed in the sacred circle there. The path is steep, treacherous. Most men cannot move this stone, even on flat ground. But if your strength serves good purpose, if it comes from the spirits of light rather than darkness, you will succeed. Cole studied the boulder, his stomach sinking. The thing had to weigh close to 1,000 pounds. The ridge Nitis indicated was at least 200 yards away, up a slope that looked nearly vertical in places. This wasn't a trial. It was designed to fail. Ayita approached the boulder, circling it once. She placed her hands on the stone, testing its surface, finding purchase points. Then she crouched, wedging her fingers underneath, and lifted. The boulder rose. Not easily. Her muscles strained, her face twisted with effort, but it rose. She adjusted her grip, settled the massive weight against her chest and shoulder, and began walking. The crowd gasped. Even those who'd wanted her dead seemed stunned by the raw display of strength. This wasn't supernatural or demonic. This was just bone and muscle operating on a scale most people never witnessed. The first 50 yards were relatively flat. Ayita moved steadily, her breathing controlled despite the enormous weight. But then the path began to climb, and Cole saw her steps slow, saw the way her legs trembled with each placement. At 100 yards, she stopped. Set the boulder down carefully. Her chest heaved, sweat soaking through her dress despite the cool morning air. She fails, one of the medicine men declared. The curse weakens her. She's resting, Cole shot back. That's not failure, that's strategy. Ayita straightened, rolling her shoulders. She looked at the remaining distance, at the steep section still ahead, and Cole saw calculation in her eyes. She was measuring costs, determining if success was even possible. Then she bent, gripped the boulder again, and lifted. The next 50 yards took twice as long as the first. The slope increased, forcing Ayita to lean back, to use her entire body as a counterweight. Her feet slipped on loose rock. Once she went to one knee, the boulder nearly rolling free. But she held it, adjusted, and kept climbing. At 150 yards, with 50 still remaining, Ayita's legs gave out. She went down hard, the boulder rolling away from her, bouncing twice before wedging against an outcropping. Cole started forward, but warriors blocked his path. He could only watch as Ayita lay on the ground, her chest heaving, her arms shaking from exertion. She has failed, the medicine man announced with satisfaction. The spirits reject her. The trial isn't over, Nitis said sharply. She has until the sun clears the eastern ridge to complete the task. That is tradition. Ayita pushed herself to hands and knees. Blood ran from scrapes on her palms, where the stone's rough surface had torn skin. She crawled to where the boulder had stopped, placed her hands on it, and tried to lift again. The stone didn't move. She tried again, planting her feet, pulling with everything she had. The boulder shifted slightly but wouldn't rise. Cole's throat tightened. She'd pushed too hard too fast, exhausted muscles that needed time to recover. The remaining distance was impossible now. Ayita sat back, staring at the boulder, then at the ridgetop where the sacred circle waited. Then she looked down at the assembled tribe, watching her fail. Something changed in her expression. Not defeat, but decision. She stood, turned away from the boulder, and began walking back down the slope. The crowd murmured. The medicine men smiled. Even Nitis looked puzzled. Ayita walked past Cole without meeting his eyes, past the council, past the gathered tribe. She kept walking until she reached the horses, where she picked up a coiled rope from her saddle. Then she turned and walked back up the slope. "What are you doing?" Cole called out. Ayita didn't answer. She reached the boulder, secured the rope around it with practiced knots, then looped the other end around her shoulders and chest in a makeshift harness. She couldn't lift the boulder anymore, so she was going to drag it. The method was slower, less impressive, but it worked. Ayita leaned forward, taking the weight through the harness, and began climbing. The boulder scraped and bounced behind her, the rope cutting into her shoulders, but it moved. 25 yards. Her pace was agonizing, each step a visible battle against exhaustion and pain. But she didn't stop. 40 yards. The harness had rubbed through her dress, drawing blood where rope met skin. Still, she climbed 45 yards. The sacred circle was visible now, just 10 yards ahead. The sun had cleared half the eastern ridge. Time was running out. Ayita's legs buckled again. She went down, the boulder's weight pulling the rope tight, cutting off her air. For a terrible moment, she just lay there, struggling to breathe. Then she reached forward, grabbed rock, and pulled, dragged herself and the boulder another foot. Then another. The crowd had gone completely silent. Even the medicine men had stopped smiling. Cole realized what they were all witnessing. This wasn't just physical strength. This was will made manifest. This was someone who'd spent a lifetime being broken and had learned that getting back up was more important than never falling. 5 yards from the circle, Ayita couldn't pull any more. She lay flat, the harness cutting into her, blood mixing with sweat and dirt. The sun cleared the ridge. Technically, time had expired. "She has failed," the medicine man began. "No," Nitis interrupted, his voice hard. Look, Ayita wasn't done. She'd reached back, grabbed the rope behind her, and was pulling it hand over hand. dragging the boulder those final yards through pure, stubborn refusal to quit. 3 yards, 2, 1. The boulder rolled into the sacred circle and stopped. Aita collapsed completely, the harness going slack. She didn't move. Cole broke free of the warriors and ran up the slope, dropping to his knees beside her. Aita, talk to me!" She opened her eyes, blood on her lips where she'd bitten through in effort. "Did I, finish?" "You finished," Cole confirmed, his voice rough. "Good." Her eyes closed again. Can't feel my legs." Nitis reached them, looking down at Aita with an expression Cole couldn't read. "The first trial is past. Barely, but past." He turned to his warriors. "Get her water. And medicine for those wounds." As warriors moved to help, Cole looked back at the tribe assembled below. Their faces showed something different now. Not acceptance, not yet, but respect. Even grudging respect was a start. The medicine men conferred, their expressions dark. Finally, one spoke to Nitis, who translated for Cole. They acknowledged she passed the first trial, but they claim the manner of passing, using rope, using tools, shows the weakness of her strength. That true spiritual power would not need such tricks. She adapted, Cole argued. Used intelligence when brute force failed. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. Perhaps, Nitis said. The second trial will test that wisdom. But first she must recover. We will reconvene at sunset. Warriors helped Aita to her feet. She could barely stand, her legs shaking. Deep rope burns across her shoulders and chest. But she walked down the slope under her own power, refusing to be carried. They were given a shelter at the edge of the grounds, small, private, with guards posted outside. Cole wasn't sure if the guards were for protection or imprisonment. Maybe both. Inside, Cole helped Aita remove the rope harness, wincing at the damage. The rough hemp had cut through fabric and skin, leaving raw wounds that would take weeks to heal properly. "You shouldn't have pushed so hard," Cole said, cleaning the wounds with water from a clay pot the guards had provided. "You nearly killed yourself." "Better nearly than actually," Aita replied, her voice hoarse. "And I had to finish. Had to show them I'm not weak, not cursed, just different." "You showed them something," Cole agreed. "Not sure what they'll make of it." Aita was quiet while Cole worked, her face tight with pain she refused to voice. Finally she spoke. "When I was out there, struggling with that boulder, I realized something." "What?" "I spent my whole life trying to be less tall, less strong, less visible. Trying to make myself acceptable by making myself smaller." She looked at her scarred, bleeding hands. "But out there I needed to be more. I needed every bit of strength, every inch of height, everything that makes me different. And it's still barely enough." Cole understood what she was saying. "You can't make yourself smaller to fit their fear. They either accept who you are or they don't. And if they don't," Aita asked, "what then? We run again? Keep running until we die of exhaustion somewhere?" Before Cole could answer, the shelter's entrance darkened. A young woman entered, carrying bowls of food and a medicine pouch. She was maybe 20. With eyes that held intelligence and caution in equal measure, she spoke in halting English. "I am Sani, healer. Nitis sends medicine for wounds." She approached Aita carefully, setting down the food before opening the medicine pouch. The paste inside had a sharp herbal smell. Sani began applying it to Aita's rope burns with gentle efficiency. "You did well," Sani said quietly. "With boulders. Many did not think you could finish. What did you think?" Aita asked. Sani considered the question. I did not know what to think. I never saw you before today. I only heard stories." She met Aita's eyes. "Stories were wrong. You are not a monster, just a strong woman who works hard." The simple acceptance in those words seemed to hit Aita harder than any of the day's physical trials. Her eyes welled with tears she refused to let fall. "The second trial," Cole asked. "What will it test?" Sani's expression darkened. "Wisdom, they will ask questions. If answers prove you think like a human, not a demon, you pass. If answers prove corruption..." She didn't finish the thought. "What kind of questions?" Cole pressed. "Questions with no good answers," Sani replied. "Questions designed to trap you. The medicine men choose them. They want you to fail. She finished applying the medicine, then pulled out dried meat and bread from one of the bowls. Eat, recover strength. You will need it. As Sunny left, Cole and Aita sat in the dim shelter, sharing the food in silence. Outside, they could hear the tribe preparing for the evening trial, voices raised in argument and discussion. They're debating, Aita said, listening. Some want the trial stopped. Say I've already proven enough. Others want them to continue, want me to fail so they can justify what they've always believed. Can you hear what they're saying specifically? Cole asked. Some of it. Aita tilted her head, listening. There's a woman. She's asking why, if I'm truly cursed, her crops didn't fail when I walked past her fields last summer. Another man is arguing that my presence must have caused the drought, even though the drought started before I was born. She laughed bitterly. They're arguing about whether correlation equals causation, using me as the variable. Cole moved closer, sitting beside her against the shelter wall. Whatever questions they ask tonight, remember, there's no shame in not having perfect answers. Wisdom isn't about knowing everything. It's about knowing what you don't know. That's not very reassuring, Aita pointed out. Would you prefer I lie and say it'll be easy? Maybe. They sat together as the sun descended, drawing the day toward evening and the second trial. Cole found himself studying Aita's profile, the strong line of her jaw, the way exhaustion had carved temporary shadows under her eyes, the dried blood still visible at the corner of her mouth. She'd nearly died today, proving she wasn't a monster. Tonight, she'd have to prove she wasn't stupid or corrupted, or whatever else the medicine men decided to test. And tomorrow, if there was a tomorrow, there would be a third trial. Cole, Aita said quietly, if this goes wrong, if I fail tonight or tomorrow, don't let them take you down with me, just walk away. You've done more than anyone had a right to ask. Not happening, Cole replied immediately. I'm serious. You have a life to go back to. A ranch, land, a future. Don't throw that away for someone you've known 3 days. Cole took her hand, the one that wasn't too damaged, and held it firmly. That ranch was just a place I was hiding. That life was just time I was wasting. These 3 days have mattered more than the last 3 years combined. Aita looked at him, searching his face for the lie. The inevitable moment when his patience would break, and he'd realize what a mistake he'd made. She wouldn't find it. Because Cole had made many mistakes in his life, but this wasn't one of them. Outside, drums began to beat, the call to gather for the second trial. It was time to see if strength of body could be matched by strength of mind, and whether wisdom was enough to overcome fear. The council fire blazed as darkness claimed the amphitheater. The entire tribe had gathered again, their faces flickering in and out of shadow as flames danced and twisted. Cole stood beside Aita at the center, feeling the weight of 200 judgments pressing down. The 3 medicine men sat elevated on a natural rock platform, their ceremonial dress making them look larger, more imposing. Nitis stood to the side, his role now reduced to witness rather than judge. The eldest medicine man spoke in Apache, his words translated by a younger warrior. The second trial tests wisdom and purity of thought. We will ask 3 questions. Answer truthfully, and we will know if your mind is your own or if dark spirits speak through you. Ashita nodded, her jaw set. The rope burns on her shoulders had been bandaged, but Cole could see pain in the way she held herself. Exhaustion lined her face, yet her eyes remained sharp, alert. The medicine man's first question came like a knife strike. A child in the village falls ill with fever. His mother seeks your help, knowing your strength. But your presence might spread the curse. Do you help the child or refuse to protect him from yourself? A trap question. Answer that she'd help, and they'd claim she admitted spreading corruption. Refuse, and they'd call her heartless, proof of spiritual darkness. Aita was silent for a long moment. Then she spoke clearly. I would ask the mother what she wants. Her fear matters. Her choice matters. If she truly believes my presence would harm her child, then my help becomes harmful, regardless of intention. But if she asks, knowing who I am, then I would help, because refusing would mean I accept your judgment of me as truth. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The medicine men conferred, clearly not expecting such a nuanced response. The second question came harder. You have killed one of our warriors. He came to your dwelling with a knife, yes, but he is still dead by your hand. His family demands justice. His blood cries out. What justice do you offer? Cole's hand tightened on his rifle. This was more than testing wisdom. This was forcing her to condemn herself. Ayita's voice remained steady. I offer the truth. I did not want to kill him. I wanted him to stop. But my strength doesn't allow for gentle defense. I learned that too late. His death is a weight I carry every day. She paused. But I will not apologize for surviving. If his family wants justice, let them ask why he was sent to kill a woman alone in the dark. Let them ask who gave him that knife and that purpose. Silence. Even the fire seemed quiet. Ayita had turned the question around, forcing the tribe to examine their own complicity. The eldest medicine man's face darkened. The third question, when it came, dripped with venom. Your father chose exile over denouncing you. He lost everything, his position, his honor, his home. Was his sacrifice worth one cursed life? Or is your existence a burden that destroys everyone it touches? Cole saw Ayita flinch. This wasn't about wisdom. This was cruelty disguised as testing. No life is worth destroying another, Ayita said, her voice thick. My father's sacrifice is his choice, his burden. I didn't ask him to give up everything. I didn't ask to be born this way. But he chose love over fear. And maybe that's the only wisdom that matters, that love is worth sacrifice, even when the world calls it foolish. She looked directly at the medicine men. You want me to say I'm not worth it, that my father was wrong, that I should have died years ago. But I won't give you that, because the moment I agree I'm worthless is the moment you win, and I've spent too long believing your lies about what I am. The crowd erupted, some in anger, some in support, voices overlapping in heated argument. Nitis stepped forward, raising his hand for silence. It took several minutes to return. The medicine men deliberated, their faces grim. Finally, the eldest spoke to Nitis, who translated. They say she has passed the second trial, but barely. Her answers show pride, which can be corruption. The third trial will reveal the final truth. What is the third trial? Cole demanded. Nitis met his eyes. Trial by fire. Tomorrow at dawn, Ayita must walk through flames. If she is blessed, the fire will not harm her. If cursed, the spirits will judge her as they see fit. Cole's blood went cold. That's not a trial. That's an execution dressed up as a ceremony. It is tradition, Nitis replied. And it is final. She passes, and all accusations end. She refuses, and judgment is pronounced immediately. They were returned to their shelter under guard. Ayita collapsed onto the sleeping mat, her body finally giving in to the day's damage. Cole sat beside her, his mind racing through impossible options. I'm not walking through fire, Ayita said quietly. That's not trial by endurance. That's suicide. Agreed, Cole replied. So we leave, tonight, now, and confirm everything they believe about me. That I'm a coward who runs when truth is demanded. Truth? Cole's voice rose. There's no truth in burning alive. That's just murder with ceremony. Ayita sat up slowly, wincing. Maybe, but if we run now after coming this far, those two trials mean nothing. We'll spend our lives running, and they'll spend theirs hunting us. Before Cole could argue, the shelter entrance darkened. Sani slipped inside, her face urgent. You must leave, she whispered in her halting English. Tonight. The medicine men are not following tradition. They have soaked the fire path with oil. No one could survive it. Cole's jaw clenched. They're rigging the trial. Yes, they fear her passing. Fear what it means for their authority. Sani pressed a small pouch into Ayita's hands. Medicine for travel, food. There is a canyon 2 miles south, hidden path. My brother waits there with fresh horses. Why are you helping us? Ayita asked. Sani met her eyes. Because I watched you drag that boulder when you could not lift it. Watching you refuse to quit when quitting would have been easier. That is not a curse. That is the strength I wish I had. She glanced toward the entrance. Go now before dawn. Before they can stop you. Cole and Ayita gathered what little they had. As they prepared to slip out, Ayita paused. Your brother. He'll be punished for helping us. He knows, Sani said. We both know. But some things are worth the risk. They escaped into darkness, moving silently through the camp. Guards were posted, but Sani had timed their rounds perfectly. Within minutes, they were beyond the amphitheater, following a narrow trail only locals would know. The canyon Sani described was exactly where she'd promised. A young man waited with 2 horses, supplies already packed. He said nothing, just nodded once before disappearing back into the night. Cole and Aita rode south under star-filled sky, putting distance between themselves and a trial designed to kill rather than test. Behind them, the Red Canyon band slept, unaware their prey had escaped. Days blurred into weeks as they traveled west, then north, always moving, always watchful. They crossed into territorial land, then pushed further into regions so remote that maps marked them as unexplored. Eventually, they found it, a valley sheltered by mountains, with water year-round and land that had never known a plow or fence. No settlements within 50 miles. No one to judge or fear or condemn. They built a cabin together, Aita's strength making the work manageable. They cleared fields, established boundaries, created something that resembled a life. Months passed. Then a year. The rope burns healed into scars Aita wore without shame. Cole's ranch in Arizona Territory was reclaimed by wilderness. He never went back, never looked back. One evening, as autumn painted the valley in gold and crimson, they sat outside their cabin watching the sunset. Aita had been splitting logs, work that would take Cole hours, but took her less than one. He'd been repairing harness leather, his hands skilled with needle and thread, in ways hers were not. Do you ever regret it? Aita asked suddenly. Giving up everything for this? Cole considered the question. I gave up nothing that mattered, gained something that does, even though we're not. She gestured vaguely between them. We're married, but we're not really married. We're partners who sleep in the same cabin and work the same land. Is that a problem? Cole asked carefully. No, Aita said quickly. Then slower. Maybe, I don't know. I've never had time to think about what I want, only about surviving. Cole set down his leatherwork. What do you want? Aita was quiet for a long time, watching colors fade from the sky. I want to stop feeling like I'm waiting for the other boot to drop. Like this piece is temporary, and someone will eventually come to destroy it. No one's coming, Cole said. We're too far, too hidden. And even if they did, we face it together. Together, Aita repeated, testing the word. I like that. Never had it before. She reached over, her large, scarred hand finding his smaller one. They sat like that as darkness claimed the valley. 2 people who'd found something neither had been looking for. Not love, not yet, but partnership, trust, the knowledge that neither had to face the world alone anymore. Cole had saved her from fire once. She'd saved him from the slow death of living without purpose. The impossible request had led to an impossible life. But sometimes, Cole thought as stars emerged overhead, impossible was exactly what both of them had needed all along. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.